What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Bridge the Gap. This is the show where we talk to interesting people such as yourself, Mr. Dave Lortie, and we learn your story and we try to extract knowledge nuggets from your experience so that we can better our general sense of understanding. And we normally have a particular intro, which we'll get to. But before that, there's a life lesson we can learn from my interactions with Dave Lortie about 8 or 9 years ago. So I hit this guy up with this giant ass pitch of this whole ass thing I wanted to do. And he goes, come through to the event because I'm busy as fuck and talk to me about it and we can set something up. And then I never ever did, evidently, based on these Facebook messages and me never ending up going down that path of life. And I thought to myself reading this earlier today, damn, eh? All those years you're wondering who's interested, who's down. Here was Dave Lortie back in the day being like, yeah, just come through and we'll talk. And then, you know, the big lesson in that is make sure when people say come through and talk that you take advantage of that, because you never know who people are, and when somebody does take an interest, you should. But on that note, my bad, because I should not have just kind of like, I didn't even follow up with you or anything. Like the next message is you hitting me up the other day, and I'm like, oh, wow, that's really rude of me, all things considered. So anyhow, so yeah, it is good to have you here, and I'm excited to hear more about you and kind of go through your stuff. So typically we like to kind of go through your life story, and then, you know, at the end of it we can talk about whatever we're up to in the currents and nows. But for us all to make sense, because I do have a little bit of an opening question, I do need you to just tell us where you start your life, like the very beginning years.
I believe I was an embryo first, and then I became a fetus.
Fantastic.
Somewhere along the line, around 5 years old, I got involved with music. My parents had me in solfege lessons very early on.
Where were you? Like, were you in Montreal?
Yeah, born and raised in Montreal, Little Italy. Next to a middleman who didn't do diddly, and just kind of grew up in this neighborhood. Lived here most of my life. Moved to the plateau, moved back, moved to Verdun, moved back, but kind of Villeray my main love, and where I spend most of my time, I guess.
So we'll get into it then. I do have my proper open question. It's a little bit of a story, and then when it lands, you can kind of, you know, answer it however, which you already gave us a little taste. It's going to be a good answer. So it all starts off with my girlfriend. And one time she's washing the dishes, and I see her, and she's got her phone open, and she's playing that Black Eyed Peas song, the I Got a Feeling, ooh. She's vibing, she's dancing, she's doing her thing. I'm looking at her, and I have this, like, epiphany. I start wondering, when in the fuck did this song become chorus music? Right? Because if you think about this track and you run it back like to like the 2010s, this is like that middle of the night. Everybody's drunk. We were all dancing in circles, jumping up and down, like having the time of our life. Everybody was in circles, at least where I was at. And then 10 years later, this song doesn't change because it's a song. It stays the same. But we as people grow up so much and evolve so much that our relationship with the music changes. And now it goes from being celebration music to the music you put on when you're doing some boring stuff like working out or chores and you're trying to go back to celebrating in your mind. And that was like a big thing for me because it got me just thinking about the stories of people involved in music and whatnot. And like you start thinking about them 20-year-olds, they be out there listening to drills or whatever. They don't know that they're washing dishes to that one day. They don't know that when I heard Pop Smoke, I started washing dishes to Pop Smoke. It skips the line. I'm too old for that, like younger shit. But then like it got me thinking about just us and the interviews and everything. And you start realizing everybody kind of seems to start their story at the same place. Like they're all like older a little bit, or like 12, 13. They get their identities, they start running it, and it's just kind of this sequence of accomplishments and stuff. But it's not really like the complete picture of a person's journey. Because if you think about it, like music's something that was around even before you were 5 and got involved in music. There was music around in your life. Like there's a good chance when you were post-fetus and you came out into that womb, into the hospital room, there was some song playing there and a little baby Dave was absorbing that music. And I say that because like I can remember being 5'2" in Coast St. Luke in the little apartment equipment, and my dad had like the gray boxes, the amp and the preamp and the radio and tape deck, and it would have all these wires going out to the ghetto surround sound that we had in the living room, and you bust in like the Led Zeppelin tapes and shit like that. But then at night it was like the MC Mario club mix and this kind of vibes. And my mom's, it was like discos and musicals and Disney's and all this other stuff. And it just kind of got me on this whole like, okay, so all this stuff impacted me. I had no control over the music, and to this day that probably influences what I fuck with. So I was hoping you could bring us back as young as you can remember. Apparently it's even 5, which is wonderful. And tell us a little bit though about what it sounded like to be you back then, before you had any control over the sounds of your life.
Well, I remember a lot of Oldies 990, which was an AM station that blasted all 60s and 70s tracks, and that was always on in the car constantly. Or if it was just my dad, it would be Shom, so a lot of 70s rock, 80s rock and stuff like that. I had a brother who was 7 years older than me, so, you know, from some of my earliest memories, like early 90s, are like hearing stuff like, you know, Nirvana and Soundgarden and Pearl Jam interspliced with like a lot of hip hop, early hip hop, and like, and then drum and bass and kind of more electronic music. So my tastes were always very varied and very kind of all over the place. But hip hop and you know, electronic music were kind of from the beginning what I kind of gravitated towards.
Is that because of your brother?
I grew up around a lot of different stuff. Yeah, definitely.
And you said you were like 5 when you started to get involved in music.
Yeah, I mean, I was doing like solfege lessons. It was like clap your hands to the beat and stuff like that. And then even in grade school, I was in, you know, choirs and stuff like that. And got into high school, I was in a music concentration program. So it was like 2 out of 6 periods every day was music. And then you have band practice after school and competitions on the weekends and stuff like that.
What were you?
I played the bassoon, which was kind of an interesting thing.
Brass instrument that nobody remembers?
No, it's a woodwind instrument, actually. It's like a big long tube that kind of sits like that. You always see it kind of poking up over someone's head in the orchestra. It's like the bass note in a woodwind orchestra kind of thing.
So you would be busting that out, learning all kinds of music theory and playing all the classics. Well, the classics for like I just picture a little bit the high school band shit where like you're all like playing and doing coordinated movements and stuff.
We did a lot of pop music too and stuff like that, just to kind of keep the kids interested as well.
Right.
But yeah, definitely ton of classical, ton of stuff like that.
And you said you competed?
Yeah, we did competitions, probably at least 1 or 2 a month, mostly between other schools kind of in Quebec, in Montreal especially. But we went to like Music Fest Canada and stuff like that in Toronto and competed nationally. And it got pretty big there around grade 9. And then I mean, I can honestly say that it was mostly because I wanted to smoke weed after school that I stopped, you know, going to band practice and shit. But you know, there was other factors involved also. But I think it was mainly my social activity that had me kind of wanting to turn away from having to be so involved with music all the time, at least the classical music.
No, that's fair, but still, you got to go and travel and kind of do some, I would argue, some big boy stuff, you know? Like, a lot of people don't get those experiences so young.
Yeah, it was definitely a formative experience, and also, you know, taught a lot of discipline, too, because, I mean, you had to go home and practice your shit like, pretty much every night. You know, you have to have, like, 1 instrument at school, 1 instrument at home. And this is still public school. Don't get me wrong. This isn't like a private school or anything. It was at Rosemount.
Okay.
And they were pretty much, I think, the only English school that had this program. Face has something similar, but Rosemount, you know, had government support to where from Sec 1 to Sec 5, you were able to do pretty much 2 periods every day of music. And then twice a week, we'd have like a 3-hour band practice.
Yeah, that's a lot of commitment, honestly. Like, but it's also like, I mean, you're still involved in music today, so evidently something with that level of practice and dedication to it in the beginning kept you kind of hooked. I'm gonna assume there's a correlation there.
For sure.
But then you discover marijuana. I assume girls or whatever pop in, you know, distractions of life. Of
Yeah.
let's say you start to have more fun, we'll call it. Um,
Yeah.
and do you stay? You said you stopped doing classical music, but do you like stay involved with music, or do you get up to other stuff?
I mean, music was kind of always there, but I think it was kind of in CJEP when I started to go out. I guess maybe even just end of high school. I was 16 years old, but once again, my older brother kind of unlocked some doors for me, and I knew a lot of DJs and stuff like that who kind of were able to sneak me into places like Angels back in the day, and I started flying for a drum and bass night at the age of 17, and kind of fell ass backwards into promoting, whether or not it was paid gigs, whether or not people asked me to. I would promote, whatever I thought was hot at the moment, and I'd have sometimes 2 or 3 or 4 flyers that I'd put together in a little bundle and give people on Saint Laurent, and be out,
Hold up. So you were
almost
like
every night of the week.
you were like the street team guy as a teenager,
Yeah,
just by like
yeah,
you just chose to become a street team guy.
pretty much. Yeah. I mean, I had a couple of friends that were doing it too. So, I'd go and back them up. I'd say, I'll grab some of your flyers, you grab some of my flyers, and, switch and kind of help each other promote. And then, became a sub promoter for Aria and stuff like that. So I'd stand outside of places like Tokyo at the end of the night and try and get people to use my ticket to get into the after hours, and then end up in the after hours, chilling and whatever, and be allowed to have your alcohol and stuff and not get hassled by the bouncers, which was kind of a cool thing back then.
Dude, that's wild. So like, cause you're describing some stuff where like, honestly, I don't talk to a lot of people who actually do real promotion, right? In fact, I'd argue, and no disrespect, we're not the best at promotion given how few people are showing up to our events. We working on it. We learning. So to have a guy who actually was out there doing it, but you're also like now pre-internet, I imagine. Like this is like before
Yeah,
Facebook and all of this shit is coming
yeah.
in and changing it. So like it was mad. Was it effective to like literally stand there? Cause yo, man's handed me a stack of flyers, bro. I'm not even gonna lie. All this shit right here. I'm like, what the fuck do I do with this? Like, I mean, am I really supposed? Like, I don't know if I guess I'm supposed to go put it up and do all this street team shit, but like, I just never did this before. So it's like, that's really what y'all was doing back then?
It's a talent. I mean, you had to be kind of innovative, and with, the 3 to 5 words you could get out before somebody was passing you or whatever, or just straight up like get in their face and be like, you got to come to this kind of thing, or just, find an interesting way, like behind the back or something, or, through the legs, just kind of just act a fool to get somebody to actually notice you and take the time to actually give you their attention for more than a microsecond. Uh, and whether or not the person drops it in a garbage bag or garbage can or throws it on the floor 5 steps later, you've still done your job. They still know about it. They still probably looked at the flyer. It's kind of imprinted in their memory. Whether or not they come is is a whole other situation. But yeah, it was, I mean, back then that was pretty much the only way. I mean, you could put up posters, but then your posters would either get torn down or you'd get a nice fat fine from the city.
Hold on, are you
The
not
cops
allowed
would,
to put posters up?
no, it's always been, uh, against the law, but it's really kind of, maybe 1 in 10 will actually get ticketed for it. And they go to the venue that your show is at and basically force the venue through threats to say, give give them your address and phone number and
Oh,
whatever,
say
so that they
word.
can send you an actual piece of paper in the mail saying you put up a poster on this post at this time and it's illegal. So you get one warning and then you get, fined however much.
And the cops will peer pressure the venue people
Yeah.
into your information, and then it's done just to
Yeah.
find out who you are.
I mean, that's the way it was. That's the way it was in like 2008, 2010 kind of days. I don't know if they're being more lax about it. Probably got, other ways of making income that are more effective, like jaywalking tickets and stuff like that. But
Yeah,
that is the way it used to
that
be.
is fair. There are jaywalking tickets. I never got one, but it's possible. Man, that's a wild thought. But still, at least you was out there as a young one. And I guess you clocking mad sales game too doing this because, like, you're really meeting people and starting to gauge out, I guess, who's going to go to what kind of event, who's going to have interest in what. And were you, like, limited to, like, what kind of scenes were you involved with at that point? Because that's all, like, after hours. That's, like, more the EDM side of life, right?
No, actually, when I was doing that, it was mostly for the hip hop. But we were targeting, you know, people who were at hip hop nights. I mean, we'd stand outside Tokyo because there was always kind of the consistently biggest crowd on I want to say Friday, Saturday night. It might have even been Thursdays at that point. I'm not even sure. But yeah, just try and get the most people funneling out. And you could kind of gauge too, because you get your tickets back sometimes and see what worked and what didn't. But it tended to be the best place to give out. And then as we were walking down, we'd be talking to people and saying, you know, after hours, you want, you know, reduced ticket, whatever. So they'd get in for like $15 instead of $30. And then you'd get whatever it was, $2-3 out of that. Oh boy, brain fart. Been working at Grand Prix for 6 days now. It's my brain is a little foggy. I forgot where I was going on that train.
No worries, man.
Okay. Yeah. What was I targeting? Who was I targeting? Right. I was mostly on Saint Laurent. I mean, always whenever I was promoting, I was mostly on Saint Laurent, places like Blue Dog and Blizzards and Jupiter Room, Korova. You know, I've seen some of these bars through like 4 or 5 name changes and stuff like that too. So the names that I might give are not, you know, what they're called today, but you know, everything all the way up to Prince Arthur. Between kind of Rachel and Prince Arthur was kind of where stuff was happening. It still is, obviously.
Like, lately, that seems to be one of the hotter spots.
Yeah, it's always kind of been the English spot. You know, there was more places on Saint Denis for the French universities and stuff like that because of the proximity to the McGill ghetto and whatnot. It's just kind of where stuff gravitates towards, more accessible and less touristy than Crescent Street kind of thing. And,
that's fair. You know, Crescent Street does feel very touristy these days.
Oh, it always was. And there was like some, you know, like super mainstream clubs like Club Extreme and stuff like that. You know, the ones that would have like the radio shows on Mix 96 and stuff like that. MC Mario Master Mix from Club Dome. Like, you know.
Say a word. I would hear that shit, but like I was like a minor back then, so I wasn't registering where Club Dome was. I'm sure I turned 18 before. I don't even know if it's around, but like I just never I never went there, so it was always just a radio name to me.
Club Dome was where Le Central is, on the corner of Saint Laurent and St. Catherine.
Okay.
It was this like giant 2-floor club full of douchebags, and it was quite the experience, actually. But yeah, I did a night there in like 2000, actually. Very, very limited, short time, but it was an interesting place. But I went to school with a lot of Italians, so that was kind of where they went out. That was the thing. There was a group of 7 owners that had 7 clubs. It was Jet, Extreme, Club Dome. Oof, I couldn't name the others if I tried, but they were all kind of the more mainstream kind of douchier clubs.
Right.
But they made money, and they were always full, so there was always a.
I was felt like back then I couldn't afford those clubs. I'm gonna be real with you. I would just like look at the pictures and be like, I don't know if this is for me.
Yeah.
I was like Mad Hatters. That's more my speed. Thursday had those dollar beers.
Peel Pub with the $5 pitchers and stuff. Yeah.
But so you were doing that promoting thing, and when did you start? Do you remember like what year around you got into it?
In 2000.
So it was around 2000. And then how long are you doing this promoting thing for? Like how long do you push this? Or is this just kind of how it starts and evolves?
Till about 2014, I mean, on and off. I mean, the first couple of years, I was kind of super into it. And then by 2004 or so, I was kind of trying to find myself and figure out, you know, what I was doing in my life kind of thing. And I took a few years kind of out of the scenes. And then in 2007, I was really heavy into the electronic music scene. And that kind of hung on to like about 2014. But by then I was kind of getting more involved with throwing parties and raves and stuff like that, and
Right.
kind of
So like in two.
more involved with the production instead of just the promotion kind of thing.
Right. So in like the early 2000s, then that's like a more hip hop side of things you're involved with.
Yeah.
Is that like the
Yeah.
English side or the French side of the city?
Always English, always English. I mean, there was some overlap, obviously, but I've always, I cannot say that I've been militant, but I've always been a very proud Anglophone. I do embrace my, French side, my French last name.
I feel that.
But I've always been a very proud Anglophone, and I always kind of gravitated more towards that side. But I do enjoy it. I do listen to, especially now, I listen to more than ever, more French stuff. But in terms of promotion, always kind of gravitated towards Saint Laurent, so it ended up being mostly the English side of things.
So was it like you were affiliated with the clubs, or did you like meet the people and kind of work with individuals?
It was mostly the people and the DJs. Whether I met them through my brother or whether I just met them kind of through hanging out and stuff like that. There's guys like Red Dread, and Quite Sane, and those guys. Macer back in the day was playing hip hop. It was kind of those guys that kind of I would sort of follow around and stuff like that. And then, by the mid 2000s, I would meet up with Red Dread, and we had to red light after hours in Laval. I'd go and like hang out with him. He'd just feed me rum all night, and we'd just hang out and smoke weed behind the DJ booth, and just get into trouble with the dudes who knew how to do it right.
Right. So like, do you have like, what are some of the most like incredible moments that you can like remember from like stories? Because keep in mind, this is all shit that like the first time I even raved, or like after hours. No, it was more raved. I think after hours, way later. It was like 2012 or 13 or some shit. So like a lot of us have no idea what life was like back then in the early 2000s in the party scene.
Well, I mean, like you said, it was kind of less internet based and stuff like that. It was more, you kind of had to be somewhat, I guess, involved with the scene to know what was going on, or just meet your local promoter, your flyer boy, whatever, and they would kind of tell you what to do. There was people that were literally going out dressed up and just like whatever flyer or ticket or pass they got to a club, that's where they were going, kind of thing. They didn't necessarily always have a plan. They'd just pull up on the street and see what was hot, or just bar hop. That was what was great about Saint Laurent too, is you go to like 6 clubs in one block, kind of thing. So I think the one-off events were kind of harder to sell, but the weekly kind of things were more where it was at, and people knew that if they went to that club on that day, well, that was what was happening, and it was always kind of the same week after week. Special guests aside, whatever, there was guys like Macer and Master Beater had a night at Lola Lounge, or no, excuse me, Luba Lounge. No, it was Lola Lounge. It became Lola Lounge after they moved, on a Tuesday, and then Wednesday, well, it was Blizzard's for Macer's reggae night, which just ended recently. I mean, it was there for God knows how many years. And then, Thursday was a hip hop night somewhere else, probably Blue Dog. Friday night, mid 2000s, you'd have drum and bass night at Blue Dog on Fridays. And then, Saturday, Sunday was a toss up because there were so many good things going on all over the place. So you kind of, pull up on Saint Laurent and meet up with people and see where people were going and kind of just jump around kind of thing. So it was a very different time. It wasn't like laser focused, like, okay, this is the event I'm going to. You could end up going to like 4 or 5 different parties and kind of just jumping around. And
most of us have no fucking idea. Most of us, this is like my anecdote. So if you're watching this and you're cool, this isn't about you. Most of us in my little circles have no fucking idea where fucking anything is at any time. We'll like have the one event we go to, then we get there, and the where do we go next gets real fucking hard to answer because none of us know shit. I'm 34 and I don't know how to party right. What's up, DJ Overflow? What's up, Willie? Also, it's Willie Scandals' birthday, so happy birthday, Willie.
Happy birthday.
And Yeah, no, it's like really interesting because that idea of like a tour guide of like what the fuck is happening is something that's been on my mind recently because for the fucking life of me, I'm having a hard time finding events of the local hip hop variety through Facebook and social media because when you
Yeah,
have 2,000 Facebook friends and a shit ton of people you're following, you don't see shit again. You're back to like square one. You're not in the
yeah,
place you would
really,
think you
fucking
would.
totally.
Like it's too
Yeah,
many people. You're not seeing it like you're supposed to. But so it's like interesting and like I don't know who the guys like you are in the digital era are, and I never thought to think of the guy who would be that guy until
I
this
think
moment.
the digital era kind of eliminated the need for that kind of person. I mean, there were legit people who would text me on any given night, being like, "Where do I go?" Literally, just like send me somewhere. And there was I'd say a dozen people Friday, Saturday nights, whether or not I was going out, people would be texting me saying, you know, what's hot tonight, what's going on, and I'd have like a list of like the 5 best things to do in Montreal, kind of thing.
Yeah,
I
I'm
mean,
not even.
there was the mirror, which was called Montreal before it was called Montreal,
The mirror was good, bro.
and the hour, and they had, you know, guys like Darcy McDonald and Steve Lala doing columns on, you know, night by night. This is what the best thing to do is, kind of thing. So, you know, you'd read that and you'd say, okay, this is kind of where I need to shift my focus, kind of thing. But it was through people on the street that, you know, you would find out what was going on, for sure.
Um,
It's kind of weird to
no, but
think
like I'm
back
not
like
even
that.
gonna lie to you, bro. You may think this is like an obsoleted thing, but like I can't say I'd pay a lot for it. But I might pay somebody $15 to plan me a fire night so I don't have to actually Google shit. Like I'm not even lying. If I knew who these fuckers were out there who really knew this shit, I'd be like, hold
Yeah,
up, because yo, now I have to go out and try to be seen at things, and it's like that's why I went to that thing you posted. I'm like, he posted a thing. That's a thing I can go to. Like, we're at that point, man. I don't even know what's out there. And here's the thing, I am trying to meet the people. Social media is not helping me, it's making it
no,
worse.
yeah,
So it's like, I really just. I'm fascinated at the idea of these like cultural curators in a sense, because in that case, you're culturally curating the live stream the way maybe a playlist curator curates somebody's music, and that's
fair enough.
crazy. Like I think if anything, our local indie lower end scene highly needs people like that that could be trusted to direct people.
An entertainment concierge.
Yeah. And like, yo, you call it that, and middle class people will pay you up the ass for that service. I'm not even
Yeah,
playing. Like,
yeah,
yo, you get some like 32-year-old that's got like a babysitter, the kids be sent away. Like, they got time and they got like 3 bills ready for this shit. What's $20 to
yeah, yeah.
pay somebody to fucking tell you what to do?
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Shit, I just gave her a whole ass business.
I wish I was more inclined to be involved with nightlife stuff. I mean, at this point, I feel kind of like a jaded old man, and you know, I feel kind of awkward when I go out sometimes.
Mm.
The social anxiety, especially through COVID and stuff like that, is kind of real. But and I don't kind of depend on the social lubricants as much as I used to. Uh, so it's kind of sometimes a little awkward to go out, especially if you're not sure who you're going out with, kind of thing. I was always kind of that lone wolf that would just pull up and know that I was going to know someone, you know.
Mm.
Uh, Guys like Overflow, you know, would always be kind of around, and I, you know, pull up on the club and know that he was going to be lone wolfing it too, and we'd lone wolf it together, kind of thing. You know?
Mm.
But I was never afraid to pull up on a spot alone and just kind of see what was up and see what was going down, because I was more there for the music and the vibe than I was really to be seen or to be, heard or anything like that. I was just kind of there to have fun on my own terms, kind of thing.
Yo, if you're open for it, we got a question for you, and I'm not gonna lie, it's actually been a minute since I got an actual question for somebody in my chat. Thank you,
Fair enough.
Spectres81. How do you deal with social anxiety, given what you just said?
It's a very good question. Um, I mean, you kind of just got to ride it out. I mean, mindfulness is something that's been very helpful to me, whether that's meditation or just kind of being in the moment. Uh, just kind of trying to be a little bit more in control of your thoughts. Um, just being able to label emotions as they come through. So if you're feeling something, if you're feeling anxious or whatever, you say, okay, that's anxiousness. Why am I feeling anxious? What's the root cause of this anxiousness? And you kind of dissect it in your head to the point where you learn to feel comfortable with it, I guess. You know, if you're feeling angry, it's, well, why am I feeling angry? What is the root cause of this anger? Why is it affecting me the way it's affecting me? And through that kind of mindfulness, you can sort of at least rationalize in your own mind why you're feeling a certain way. I'm not going to lie though. I mean, alcohol is pretty much the best, you know, the best way is, you know, numbing your receptors and into thinking that you're, you know, you're okay kind of thing, but it's not a healthy way of dealing with things, that's for sure. And weed is definitely not the answer at my age, because weed often causes more anxiety than it gets rid of, depending on, you know, any number of factors. But
yeah, I mean, weed's a weird one, right? Because like I feel so much more invested in caring about people if I'm stoned. It is the weirdest shit. So for me, it's like, bro, let me smoke 17 joints in a row, and I promise you, I'm gonna be more social. Give me some alcohol, and I might say some dumbass shit. But like, I wouldn't recommend that for people, because yo, weed is a weird one. It's a double-edged sword too. If it really fucks with your anxiety, then it's not really a solution for anything. I hear CBD though, maybe.
Yeah.
I never fucked with CBD because there was like weed that don't get you high, and I'm like, I mean, it's a hard one for me. But like,
well, I mean, there's a little bit of it doesn't get you high, but it does relax the fuck out of you. I mean, especially I use CBD a lot in oils and tinctures and stuff like that over the last few years, and then went to Italy recently, and that was all we could get was CBD, because the CBD was legal, but the weed wasn't. So to avoid fucking with anything, it was like, okay, let's go and get some CBD, and kind of recognizing the buzz that it actually gives you a little bit more. And it's very effective at just being super calming and, you know, pain relief, just bringing down your general level of anxiety and inhibition too at the same time. Which is a cause of anxiety for sure. So yeah, I mean, I smoked a lot of CBD in Italy, and it was really, really good. It was really nice. I hadn't smoked weed in probably 2 years, at least, definitely not, you know, intensively. And then I started back with the CBD, and now, you know, I'll have blaze a joint almost every day and feel just fine. But before, when I stopped, it was like palpitations, anxiety, just like not feeling good at all, the weed. And it comes in cycles. It's like I'll sort of ease it back into my diet every now and then, you know, it'll fade out. And it doesn't fuck with my productivity or my motivation like it used to. But that was always a problem for me. It was kind of, you know, the procrastination and weed not being conducive to productivity.
Yeah, I totally relate to that. I mean, but like, I had a question just on top of that, because like, I think for me, as much as drugs help, I use the writing as a very creative component to vent out certain shit. Like, let's say because a lot of times when I'm anxious, it's because something is like clogged. I'll call it like a lane is clogged, or something's not moving how I want it to move. And a couple of things has to happen. I have to change my expectations, which is usually what has to happen, or I have to change the plan, or I have to change the approach, or a lot of things something has to change. So often I'll like write out a song, or even sometimes I'll make like Facebook posts that never get posted, just to like write out that shit. And I find that helps me focus, because back to what you were saying about the mindfulness, like to achieve that level of mindfulness, I find writing is just powerful as an asset. Do you do anything like that, or journaling, or the meditations, or any of that stuff?
Absolutely. I mean, it freaks people like Melissa from Under Pressure out when I show up with a notebook, but I'm a notebook guy, and I pretty much always have a notebook on me. I mean, in more recent years, it's translated to a notepad on my phone sometimes. but I still have multiple notebooks going at every and all time. And I just make lists, and I try and get the things out of my head. You know, the things that'll keep you awake at night, the things that you'll wake up at 4 a.m. and be like, "Ah, shit, I got to do that." It's like, no, instead you put it on paper, and that alleviates a giant amount of anxiety. That really does, no matter what form it takes. You know, it could be journaling, you call it what you want, but just getting the thoughts out of your mind are obviously going to make them kind of bang around in there a whole lot less, you know.
That's dope.
It's been a huge thing for me, for sure, ever since God knows when. I mean, for at least 20 years, I've been a strong journaler, if you want to give it that.
Honestly, that's just the name I got from the jargon of the crowd on the internet that's into it. I'm like, yo, journaling. I mean, it makes sense. I'm gonna just use that term. It's simpler. It's concise.
People are afraid of it, though, as far as the term goes. I think because they just feel like it's got a bit of a sort of lame kind of connotation, or they feel like, I don't want to write a journal, but that's not really what it's about. It's literally just, you know, any which way you can get thoughts out of your head and onto paper. It makes them real. It also, I find sometimes when you get the thoughts out on paper, you can organize them better, A, and B, they take kind of a metaphysical presence, and now they're not just your thoughts. There's something that's on paper that someone else can read, that, you know, you can share with someone, and then they have a tendency to materialize more. They're not just dreams, they're not just ideas, they're now real and in the real world, kind of thing.
That's fair. I'm with that. So yo, I don't want to like dwell forever on this topic, but it is a good and interesting thing, because yo, for me, at the end of the day, if we'd be learning on it. But what, so you said at like 24-ish, you kind of started to pull back from the promoting, I guess. What was the main reason for that?
I think I had a bit of an identity crisis when the first kind of real family loss, death that occurred, that kind of affected me. My grandmother, who I was very, very close with, passed away. And I had been out of CEGEP for about a year, and I had literally just gone back. I just started back in night school at Dawson, and she passed away, and I kind of like just sort of lost it. It kind of rocked my whole world. I mean, the house I live in right now is her house. So I mean, she's always and still has a very strong influence on me. And yeah, so my grandmother passed away, and I sort of didn't know what to do with myself. I didn't have much of a sense of direction. I was in social science. I didn't know what career moves I wanted to make.
They do not tell you what the fuck job social sciences is when you're in social sciences.
It can literally be anything, and it's absolutely nothing. So yeah, I didn't know where I was heading, what I was doing, and I just didn't have much of a desire to go out or be social or whatever. I kind of needed some introspection, and kind of needed to figure it out for myself. And I think it just was sort of a bit of a depressing kind of time for me, and I sort of had to reorganize my ways and my life. I'm not sure really what else was going on at that time, but there was definitely kind of a sense of enemy. I didn't really know where I was going, and I also didn't have very much money, because I wasn't doing anything stable, I don't think, for income at that point either, because I was in school. That was always the thing. My parents always said, you know, we'll help you out as long as you're in school, but if you're not in school, you gotta work. You gotta pay your own way. And I mean, I guess by then I was 2004, I was 20. Yeah, it was kind of like I needed to start kind of paying for my own shit. So I started, you know, working and doing whatever it was in food, became a butcher and stuff like that, and started kind of doing my own thing.
Like, and you started with butchering?
Yeah, I mean, I had worked a couple of odd jobs at restaurants and stuff as a delivery person and stuff like that. I I was going around to John Talon Market to all the stalls and taking lunch orders. That was when I was like 15, 16, I think. And then I worked at the cheese store at John Talon Market, and then I ended up at the butcher at John Talon Market, stuff like that. I ended up at La Maison du Rôti at one point when I was probably about 23, 24. Yeah. And that was kind of what sparked my love affair with the knife at the very least, I guess. But food was already kind of, you know, definitely taking a big place in my life.
So you was kind of, so you start working in like the restaurant side of things, but you're like the chef, man.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess I didn't really set foot in a restaurant until about 2012. So about 10 years ago. And
right.
Yeah. That was interspliced. It was actually on the corner of Mount Royal and Saint Laurent. And so it was like I would finish my shift at 2 and run across to like a place like Belmont or something like that and go out or sort of, you know, be promoting at night while I was behind the counter talking to people, you know.
No, that's fair. So you're back in like, so in like 2004, you said you're 20, you're in school, you're trying to figure out your life, you start working a little bit, and then how long does that like patch kind of last until you start to have a new or different direction?
I guess it's kind of foggy what was going on in 2005, 2006. But I think 2007 was kind of when I got kind of back into the into the music scene. Excuse me, more on the electronic side of things though. With the drum and bass parties and stuff like that. And then it got to be in like 2010 where I was, you know, helping promote 3 or 4 or 5 nights a week. I look back on some Facebook posts from like 2009, 2010, like literally have like every day of the week except for Monday there was something going on, and I was involved with 3 of them, and I was helping promote, you know, 3 others, kind of thing. And there was, you know, a hip hop night thrown in there somewhere with like 5 other electronic nights or something.
This is
like
back when it was all like in like broken buildings and shit, or was it in like the clubs?
I mean, we did. Okay, let me try and nail this here. We did a Tuesday night somewhere, I can't remember where. Wednesday nights was at Koi, that was Bass Drive, the night that still exists today.
Right.
Then Thursday night was Forward at Passport on Saint Denis and Ontario. Friday night we had a monthly at Cafe Campus, actually, or Petit Campus. Saturday was pretty much generally reserved for raves and like bigger warehouse parties or wherever we could throw them, throw parties in tunnels and fucking warehouses. There was a place, it was 3810 St. Patrick, that housed a lot of parties.
Oh, I'm pretty sure I've been to that St. Patrick place. I think I know it. But it got like that lasted until the 2012 or 13s before it got closed down.
13ish, yeah. I mean,
yeah, I absolutely went there one time. I remember that shit vividly. That was to me like that shit was like the pinnacle of dopeness as far as partying and things I've been to in terms of environment.
There was a lot of dope parties there. It was super ghetto. It was super grimy. I mean,
loved it.
Even though there was people stomping through there was still a coating of dust constantly, kind of getting kicked up and stuff. You got big black boogers the next day and whatever, but it was
highly wrecked on MDMA, so my opinion is highly skewed. Maybe I don't know if I'd love it in my 30s, but my God, do I have amazing memories of that type of shit.
Yeah. No, there was a lot of that was a good period. I think it was kind of like, I think dubstep kind of saved the day there somewhere along the line. Where it was like the 2010 to 2012, there's all these kids that were hopped up on MDMA or ketamine or whatever that were kind of throwing all these really, really wicked underground parties. And it sort of all kind of tapered off around 2014, 2015, and you know, electro came back. Electronic music is all about like waves and what's popular at the moment kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, I needed to get out in 2014. I just needed to stop doing what I was doing. And I pulled back and pulled out of kind of the scene. But at the same time, that was kind of right when my involvement with Under Pressure was kind of intensifying.
Before we get into that, which we do, so you're back in the raving stuff and all that in like 2007s when it's like really small and it's like kind of picking up, or like where is it at in this place? Because that's like before it's like super popular then.
I think it was more like back then it was kind of more loft parties and stuff like that, smaller, like 50 to 100 person parties. It wasn't the big like warehouse parties with a giant sound system and stuff like that. That had kind of faded out, I think, sort of towards the 2000s. Kind of the 94 to 98 was kind of the big like rave, big rave days in Montreal. And then kind of towards the 2000s, it was like the more commercial raves that were taking over. So, 4, 5, 6 times a year, there was these big warehouse raves, or even Olympic Stadium. They would do stuff before Black and Blue was at, Paradis Congrès. They would have some raves there even. So it was like the bigger kind of more commercial things where you could go and see a lot of different kinds of music at once. And then I think towards the 2007, it was that kind of in between where it was a lot of, smaller kind of loft parties and stuff like that. And then in 2009-10 was where it got back into the big warehouse parties, like big production with a lot of sound, not a lot of lighting, and just like really bassy music kind of thing.
So I remember a lot of these parties. I was told Ninja Code was a very important thing. So
Ninja Code and Blur, yeah.
So like if you're going down this path, right, does that change how it is promoting it versus like the hip hop shows being out in Saint Laurent? Is it like a different energy when you're out promoting this kind of stuff?
Yes, definitely, because it's got to be a lot more targeted. Whereas you can kind of interest a lot of different people in a hip hop show. You got to notice something like a little ravey or a little off about someone to want to give them a flyer for a rave. It's not going to really, it's not just going to interest Monsieur, Madame, tout le monde, as we say in French. It's not going to be for everyone. They got to have some kind of like candy jewelry or some kind of like, some just dyed hair, piercings, something a little edgy about them to want to give them a flyer on the street corner kind of thing. But that's why it was always important to flyer at events. So if you were able to, get enough flyers out at an event or a weekly night, then you would know that your event was going to do decently at the very least,
So you're okay. So were you like, you were able to say, okay, if I hand out 1,000 stacks of paper for this event, that will turn into at least 50 people or some shit like that. Some formula.
Yeah, you could break it down like that as long as you knew the people that were doing the flyer handouts, because people would, there's always like people would hand out maybe 100 and then dump another 300 in the trash kind of thing or something like that, or bring them home and use them for their cat litter or something. Who knows? Who knows what somebody's going to do unless you're going to sit there and watch them.
But like
if you're sitting there watching,
in a perfect world, if it was like honest like that, there is like an actual like math to this where you could probably even take into account people throwing shit out in this equation and come up with like okay, so 10,000 turns into 50, let's say. That's actually fucking wild. This is really just like the internet is doing all of this but on the internet, but it's really the same shit, the same measurements of success and the same efforts.
Yeah, it was always a box of 3,000 flyers because that's for some reason just the quantity that they made at the printing places. And so you'd have 3,000 flyers. Generally after a show you'd end up with about 1,000 to 1,500 of them still in the box. Unless you had like a big street team of like 10 people and you were giving them all stacks. But yeah, it was always kind of a numbers game. But if you handed out those 3,000 flyers physically hand to hand, and you knew that they weren't getting suspiciously lost or whatever, you could pretty much guarantee that you're going to have at least 120, 150 people at your event, and it was going to pop off.
That's fucking wild. That's like because that's like, there's a little bit of a cost on the printing, but that's really a time cost to like get out there And the other part of it, as you're doing this, like you said, you do collect people who will then come to you for that information later on. And that's like really, because I'd never really hit out the streets before, okay? Like, I was never really out there. I used to, like, even when I performed back in the day, it was more like I would go to events I was booked at, but I basically had a full-time job the whole time. So I wasn't, like, as enthused to going out on a Tuesday kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then now I'm trying to go out more, and I'm realizing, man, you just literally got to be out there, and you'll start to recognize the same, like, randos at that club that go to that club while you're at this club, and like you start to kind of literally piece together the regulars, the bouncers, and I'm like, oh man, this is like actually a real asset to marketing your brand as an artist or whatever, even to like even get involved in this kind of promotion, because it just forces you to talk to people about who you are.
That's the real social networking, right? I mean, before there was social networks, that was what social networking was, you know?
I mean, in theory, social networking is supposed to be like a reflection of your real life network, but it just turned into something else.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's true at all. Yeah.
What do you think? We got another question. What do you think about the hullabaloo raves, of which I don't know what that means? So, and do you think that was the pinnacle of raving days?
Hullabaloo, I'm not familiar with.
Me neither, to be honest. I was just rolling off the question. But fair enough. We tried, Spectres. But yeah, so as you're going through it, you're watching the rave scene kind of evolve. Do you have like, they were in Toronto, these raves. I don't know if you actually, that's a good question.
Okay.
Did you ever do the Toronto side of it? Did you ever leave Montreal for any of this?
I DJ'd in Ottawa once. I can say that I've been to a couple parties in Ottawa, but I never actually made it to Toronto, which is a giant kind of failure on my part, because Toronto's drum and bass scene was huge and very interesting, although a little violent, just like Toronto is in general. But Toronto's drum and bass scene was always a lot more regular and a lot bigger, and they would have the big artists and stuff like that. Just like for a lot of genres, they still get some shows that we don't. It was always I was always remiss that I never made it to Toronto more, mostly because I didn't have a driver's license, so I wasn't able to drive myself out there. But yeah, I missed a lot of really dope parties in Toronto. It also came down to, you know, my broke boy promoter styles, where I, especially when I was promoting 4 or 5 or 6 nights a week, it meant that I didn't have a job. I didn't have a regular job. I was living off of, you know, free alcohol and whatever, you know, side hustles I could, you know, get my coin up with. So I wasn't going out with any kind of bankroll or anything like that. So getting a hotel in Toronto for the weekend on top of $120 ticket was really not, you know, an option for me.
Right. That's wild to think about. And what, you DJ'd as well?
I did, because I was always my own cheapest opener. So I kind of got into the DJing thing, which I enjoyed a lot. But I mean, mainly it was a cost-effective thing where, you know, from if the event started at 10, well, I could DJ from 10 to 11:30 and not have to pay another DJ to do it, you know. So I would either open or close a lot of shows that I did. And then, you know, the more I got into it, the more I wanted to play out, and I did some parties for other people and, you know, radio shows and stuff like that. But I never got the practice that I should in to kind of keep that going. You know, it was always very interesting to me, but I can say that I honestly, other than maybe a controller here or there, I never had a full DJ setup at my home ever, I don't think. So I was always practicing at other people's houses and stuff like that. I was always missing either the turntables or the mixer or whatever. There was never a time in my life when it all came together in terms of DJing for me.
Right.
But yeah, that's something that I probably, you know, if there was anything that I was going to get back into, it would be that, I would think. It's just, it's people don't realize how much effort it actually requires to
Yeah.
track down the music, get all the music downloaded,
I have
organize
some
it.
idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
Only because my brother was a DJ in the scene with his mans under the name Bass Mechanics for like quite some time.
I was my roommate.
Johnny?
Johnny was my roommate for years.
Shut the fuck up. My brother lives with him right now.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I don't know if you know Adam Roy.
The name rings a bell.
Yeah, that's my little brother, and he was, because he was around from like then, like 2012-ish. He did like a 3-year stint, but that lifestyle can have a little impact on a human, and so he dipped out of that scene and hasn't touched any of that shit again, from what I understand. But yeah, so I got exposed through him. Like, so I started like rapping to like my little audiences of 80, and he's like, bro, 300's a tiny night for me. And I'm like, a little jealous, not gonna lie, back then. So I started going to these raves to see what the fuck it was. But yeah, man, Johnny Filth, okay, the first time, I think maybe not the first, but within the first 5 times I ever like really recorded shit, because he lived under my mom, bro. Like, he was in Pierrefonds under my mom's house. So, like, I'd just be there, and I went downstairs, and I just fucking recorded vocals and shit on this guy, whatever. He technically made a remix to one of my songs. Like, that guy has been connected to my life for, like, 12, 15 years. It's wild.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway.
Well, when he lived on Henri Julien in Villeray, he was living above my parents in my apartment, and then I ended up moving out, and he stayed on, had a whole host of dirtbag roommates. Johnny was kind of a little bit younger and kind of into a different kind of music, and we threw some parties together and stuff like that too back in the day. Not that long ago, but yeah,
right,
8 or 9 years ago.
That's why I wonder if I ended up going to your party, not even knowing it, because of him. Because there's like actually a chance of that shit. And then I watched you spin.
Very, very possible.
But my Molly was kicking in, so I had no idea what the fuck you were doing. What kind of music were you into when you were DJing?
I mean, I think when I started DJing, it was mostly dubstep, and drum and bass especially was kind of the big one for me. Breaks, a little bit of house, maybe perhaps some techno, but mostly definitely drum and bass. Yeah.
Right. So you're doing the drum and bass thing. You guys are doing the parties, and that basically runs till about, you said, 2014. Yo, the one thing I also was impressed was y'all made money. I don't know if y'all made money, but y'all made enough money to pay artists. And that shit blew my mind, because as a rapper, that's happened one time. It hasn't happened a whole lot. So, like, do you feel that, like, the rave scene has, like, do you feel like what y'all did back then has helped develop into where all these, like, Il Soniques and all this shit is now? Because to me, like, I look at all of what's happening in the mainstream as, like, all those kids grew up and are now making all this big shit happen.
I mean, there's definitely some, oh boy, there's definitely some crossover and stuff, but I feel like the Il Sonique kind of more mainstream vibe was never really the same motivation, at the very least, in terms of why people were doing it. You know, the mainstream thing has always kind of very much been about the money. You know, there's always a sentiment of, yeah, it's about the music and whatnot, but at the end of the day, the mainstream thing is more of a moneymaker, and it's just sort of set up that way. Whereas there's always going to be alcohol at a mainstream party, at a rave. A lot of times it'll be bring your own booze.
Right.
And no matter what you're doing, alcohol is always going to be the big money maker, unless you're controlling the drugs, you know, but that's neither here nor there.
Fair enough.
So yeah, the motivation really isn't the same. The crowd's not necessarily the same either. I think kind of the rave scene gives a home to a lot of people that are lacking direction or lacking community, and they find community within that kind of rave scene. The whole plur thing, the peace, love, unity, and respect, people see it kind of more as a safe space. Whether or not it is that always is sort of neither here nor there. But the good ones manage to create somewhat of a safe space, you know, through drug testing and security and whatever the case may be. Manage to create a safe space for people to do their thing and feel like they're, you know, part of something a little bit bigger. So yeah, I don't know if the whole Il Sonique thing can really be drawn as a parallel, but I mean, it definitely, I think the rave scene definitely made it possible for bigger events like that, bigger electronic music events, to be accepted in the mainstream community, just because it brought those events that were always more underground to a bigger stage. So I guess the normal people sort of felt more comfortable with it because it was on a bigger, you know, televised, getting promotion kind of the instead of just kind of kids flyering to each other in the underground, or Facebook events where you'd still have to call an info line to find out what the party was, kind of thing.
Right.
Text message.
So with regards to this, like the PLUR reality, all I can say is when a lot of people are really, 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 really fucking high, things can kind of get a little hectic.
Yeah, definitely.
I've watched some people go way too far a couple of times where I'm like, I just have this vivid memory of this girl, and she was way younger than me. Because that guy was like in my mid-20s, and this girl was like 15 tops. She was gone. She just kept looking at me and saying like the same shit over, and then she just like lay on me until she sobered up enough to like not be like where she was at. And I'll never forget that for the rest of my life. Yeah. Like I never, because you feel old as shit when some little kid's looking up at you like you're the adult, and you're like, oh fuck my life, I am the adult even if I'm high.
Yeah, and at the same time, it kind of, in some sense or another, it sort of keeps you young in your mentality. Once you feel like that old man, then you're the weird one kind of thing. But if you're sort of, you know, partying with youths, you kind of keep, I don't want to say childlike sense of wonder, but it's kind of the only way I can kind of put it. It kind of keeps you young and sort of keeps you identifying with the youth. Whereas now, you know, if I look at someone that's 20, I see kind of directionless kind of youth that are so involved with the social media thing that they don't really have any kind of identity themselves. Whereas when I was, you know, when I was 27, maybe 10 years ago, and I was hanging out with these like 16, 17-year-olds, I regarded them as peers. Yes, I saw them as younger, but I was able to identify with them on a different level kind of thing.
I mean, social media is kind of a weird thing. The people who are tapped into social media are absolutely tapped into cultures and entire things. Like, you know, Tumblr communities are a wild thing. I've been exploring the history of Tumblr fandoms, and like, they're mad social. They're just like not social the way that you were social. And I don't know what's better or worse, because I can tell you that like being internet savvy has its advantages.
For sure.
Whereas being in real life savvy has a lot of other ones. And like having a mix of the two is probably best in this day and age. But I totally get what you mean, because I'm not like good at emojis, and apparently that's important these days. That's really where it hit me. I don't GIF well. It's not good. I still use colon, bracket. I know it sounds weird, but y'all gotta understand, like, I'm starting to hit that point in life. But at the same time, I wildly see like the number of 20-year-olds I know with like 8 years experience recording songs is like you get 8 years by the time you're 20. Like I couldn't even start doing that shit until my 20s. Like, so it's like it's a different world. But I feel like at the same time, COVID was a huge part of the lack of socializing more than social media lately. Because, yo, what do we have for 2 years, bro? Like, we all be, like, Zoom call. Like, bro, work turned into the Zoom call Sanka sets. It got kind of, like, like, you know, like, it just got weird. And now everybody's out. I'm seeing everybody out. Everybody's in the streets. If anything, there's going to be a lot of fornicating happening in the next couple of years. Is my thoughts. A lot of that. A lot of pent up energy.
Looking at my immediate surroundings, I feel like a lot of people who I never would have seen as parents are becoming parents and finding themselves in that kind of situation, and it's a real good look for a lot of people. It's causing a lot of premature maturity, I guess you could say, where it's you got to grow up real fast and kind of reevaluate where you're at, and figure out what you're doing with your life. Whether those things are coming in the right order or not is a whole other discussion. But there's a lot of people getting pregnant. Hopefully, myself, not myself, but my wife included, soon enough. Yeah.
I got told that no matter what you think when that happens, you're reprioritizing your life no matter what the fuck is up. So I'm just like, all right, full speed unless I hear those words, and then we reconsider the plan because we're reconsidering that. So in, like you said, around 2014-15, rave scene was going in ways that wasn't going good for you. I guess at that end, music trends were going more pop, because at that point you got dudes like Steve Aoki that are way more interesting than a Skrillex.
Yeah. And you got Skrillex that's going in different directions, going away from the sounds that sound like Transformers trying to have kids, and like
I really liked it though.
More towards the housey things and stuff like that. And the house and techno was kind of coming more back into things. Electro was really big, and it was just kind of going off in a lot of directions at once, and it was becoming very mainstream. It was like even fucking Taylor Swift had like a fucking dubstep track. I remember being like super proud listening to like the radio in the car with my dad and be like, that's dubstep, like in like fucking 2013 or 14. And it was an interesting time. Things went a lot more mainstream, and kind of electronic music stopped being labeled as electronic music and started people started recognizing more of the different genres and stuff like that.
Right.
A lot of those producers kind of came out of the shadows and into the mainstream, and started even ghost producing stuff for mainstream people. And there was even a lot of like hip hop crossover and stuff like that with trap, which was kind of huge for both genres. And then it went completely auto-tuned and just went way off the rails there. But for a while there was this kind of trap electronic crossover that was like a completely different genre.
Yeah.
13, 14.
I remember that heavy.
It was an interesting change at a time when things were getting a little stale. So it definitely helped.
So then you kind of move your way toward, how do you get involved Under Pressure?
Well, nepotism? No. My brother was one of the founders of the festival back in '96. He was part of the crew called Urban Expressions at Dawson, and Sterling and Flo, who were the two main founders, through this club at Dawson that was throwing hip-hop related, graffiti related events, started throwing jams and things like that. And then Under Pressure was born, and my brother was involved with that at the beginnings of that. And then I guess in 2011 or 12, I came on just as a general volunteer, but because of my knowledge of sound and plugging things in, I guess got pigeonholed into helping out with the sound more than anything else. And then an unfortunate circumstance happened where in my third or fourth year, the person who had been booking all of the music, Sharon McGugan, had complications from a very bad flu and passed away. And it just so happened that was the 20th anniversary. And I was asked to, or I asked if there was help needed, and there was definitely a lot of help needed. Sterling had the bright idea that we were going to try and contact everyone who had ever played the festival So I went through 20 years of flyers and, you know, made a spreadsheet with every DJ and MC that had ever played the festival. And I think I successfully contacted probably about 240 out of the 300. And ended up with like a ridiculous lineup of DJs, which then, you know, birthed a third stage, which, you know, often it was like there was one stage that was open all weekend and then another one that would be open one of the 2 days. And I got it to the point where it was like 3 stages rolling all weekend long from start to finish. I always, throughout, you know, whatever I did, I always liked to get as many people involved as possible, just because I wanted to please as many people as possible, but also because I knew that the power of each person kind of exponentially grows the promotion of any kind of event. So the more people you have on an event, the more people are going to be drawn to that event. And so I would book pretty much a DJ per hour. There were some stages where it would be every 45 minutes there was a DJ change. So there was some years in there where I'd have 80 DJs over the course of 3 days, and then God knows how many MCs on top of that. And yeah, it was very, very hectic. But yeah, so for the last 7 or 8 years, I've been booking, especially the DJs, because I handed off the MC booking to those who are a little bit more involved in the hip hop scene than I was. People like Olivier Beveau from End of the Week, and Prix.
That worked out well for me one year.
Yeah. But that was actually the 1 year that I wasn't really involved at all. I needed to take a step back from my own mental health. In what should have been the 25th anniversary, I guess, 2 years ago, the first year of COVID. And it was kind of because the festival was also going more into a digital format, and I really didn't have a handle whatsoever on this whole Twitch thing. It was a gigantic learning curve for everyone. I didn't really see how I could be that helpful, so I felt less bad kind of sort of taking a step back and letting someone else kind of handle that.
That was a weird experience, man. I spent my whole life being like, I want to rap at Fuffoons, and there were seven people in the room in total.
Yeah.
So that was it. I mean, the internet saw it, I guess. That's cool. 7 people. But I never went to Under Pressure before that because I was very terrible at going to things. Don't be like me, folks. Go to shit. It's a good idea. But what was it? What's the vibe like at Under Pressure? Like, to walk us through like what a typical festival would feel like.
I mean, Under Pressure for me, especially, was always the one weekend where I could be certain that I was going to see everybody that I knew in Montreal practically at one point or another over the course of the weekend. And it was just kind of a big community celebration, people coming together for the love of hip hop, you know, and electronic, because there was always an undertone of electronic. A lot of people involved with the festival came from kind of the same scene that I did, some of them earlier than me too, through the early 2000s and stuff like that. So there was always a little bit of drum and bass here and there, or, you know, you'd have some of the electronic DJs playing hip hop instead of, you know, what they were used to playing. And then I kind of made it a point to have one of the 3 stages be more electronic based. So it kind of brought together both worlds for me. And it was always, you know, a very strong community vibe. Just, you know, as far as the community in and of itself, but then also the volunteers and that core of people that makes the festival run. Everybody doing all the grunt work, even putting up scaffolding and, you know, ladders and whatever. Everybody that runs around all weekend with the staff t-shirts on their back, just doing all all the little grunt work, closing off streets, security, you know, everything like that. And all
like,
those people are
where,
one big family.
Where was it normally located?
In the early years, they did at least 3 of them down on Guy and St. Catherine, where the John Molson School of Business is now.
Okay.
There's a parking lot there, and then there was an incident where a bunch of businessmen who I think were the people behind the John Molson School of Business started splashing paint on the graffiti walls to cover it up. And there was a whole big ruckus about that.
What?
Yeah. And then that's I think there was 1 year in between where they did it on Mount Royal. There's still kind of a graffiti wall kind of on Mount Royal, I think WDO or something like that. I think that was Under Pressure 4, maybe, perhaps. I might be wrong about this. But there was 1 year where it was there. And then ever since, it's pretty much been down by Fufun. And the street may or may not have been closed as widespread. But in recent years, it's always been, you know, from Saint Laurent to St. Elizabeth at the very least, if not a block further. And then the back street kind of around always closed too. Things kind of changed a little bit because Pride weekend ended up coinciding with Under Pressure a few years there. And so we'd have basically the whole Pride parade walking down St. Catherine once they were done kind of thing, which was always an interesting clash of culture. Yeah, it's been where it is for a long time, and I'm not sure how much longer it's going to be there, to be honest.
Is it still there this time?
It is. It definitely is. It's going to be a little different this year. Still not sure exactly how it's going to go down, to be honest. Things have been delayed for a great number of reasons. A lot of them dealing with bureaucracy and the city and their inability to confirm funding or whatnot, because as a lot of people know, but a lot of people don't know as well, we don't have corporate sponsors. We don't deal with big corporations. In recent years, we've tried, and it just doesn't really work out ever. Nobody wants to give money to culture like that without some kind of massive show of visibility, which we're not really willing to do. We're not willing to paint a giant Rogers tennis mural or something like that.
Right.
Yeah, like another festival that will not be named, that may or may not have finished yesterday.
Listen,
refuse to sell out and
all I can say is I walked up Saint Laurent and my first thought was, yo, this be just a pop-up shop exhibition. Like, look, I'm not trying to be even critical. I cop merch. I'm not even mad at this shit. Okay? Not even mad at it. But that's what it felt like to little old me as I walked.
Yeah.
I mean, I know there's more to it. I really do know there's more to it. But as an ignorant first timer, because again, I didn't go to shit all of my life. I'm like, I'm going to go to Mural Fest and go do the shit. And it was like, damn, really? We just walk it up and there's tents everywhere you can buy shit, and occasionally you'll see a muraler.
Yeah, yeah. Or if you look at a map, you can find all the murals from years gone by and stuff like that too. And I mean, credit to them, they've beautified that whole. Yeah, it keeps expanding. They beautified that whole neighborhood. It's great exposure and a way to monetize art too. I mean, there's a lot of muralists that started Under Pressure that have gone towards mural because, I mean, at Under Pressure you pay a small kind of subscription fee, I guess, kind of thing, where you're basically paying for your paint essentially, and you get your space on the wall, and that's how it is. You get your t-shirts and your, you know, whatever swag and stuff like that. So you're really not paying anything above and beyond what you're getting in return. But it's on a volunteer basis. Everyone who works for the festival is a volunteer, myself included.
Right.
And we do it for the love and for the community. And I mean, Mural has been a way for some of these artists, especially the older ones, to gain widespread recognition and to get their names on and their art on bigger walls with more, you know, more views, I guess you could say.
So you're saying, okay, because like all of the murals in that whole part of town then are effectively just like mural fest on mural fest on mural fest with like.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Because I didn't even know that. Like I mean I noticed the murals. I've been like taking, you know, stories of yours. You know, now it's actually that's one of my TikTok runs is let me grab these murals all over Montreal, because it's like it's so ill. But I didn't even realize it was like, I mean, I guess it makes sense, right? Like y'all are doing this year over year. There has to just be new murals going up. You're not just covering all the old ones, I assume, or sometimes.
No, they cover a lot of the major ones, especially like the parking lot on Saint Laurent, Prince Arthur, and there's a couple of other ones that do get redone, not necessarily every year, but every other year or every 3 years or something like that. The doper ones and the ones that they ended up paying more money for tend to stay up for longer. And the ones that are a little bit further off Saint Laurent tend to survive a little bit longer as well, because those are the ones that you kind of got to see a map or know where they are, where they're going down, or know the artist or something like that to even really find them. A lot of times you have to stumble upon them, you know, just from walking around the neighborhood or taking a tour, for example. It's funny because one of our volunteers does a lot of the street art tours in Montreal, and you're not just going to tour around under pressure. I mean, it's the murals are there. It's whether there's a little bit of animosity between the festivals or not. And we can get into that if you'd like. But
I mean, I'm down to get into whatever you're comfortable getting into, because I don't know anything, and I'm super fascinated by the history of it. I'm not trying to be DJ Vlad, but I'm like whatever you feel comfortable with.
Yeah. I mean, I think the animosity stemmed from an interview very early on. I would say like maybe year 1 or 2 from Mural, where they were calling themselves the first. I don't want to misquote here, but one of the first urban art festival in Canada or something like that. And we were kind of in year 15, or at least probably 18 or 19 by then. Yeah, more like 18 or 19. And they kind of disregarded completely. And then Mural staff were contacting volunteers from our festival to be like, hey, we want to open up a channel and whatnot, myself included. And it was just kind of, they were trying to psychologically browbeat people into being either involved with both festivals or just, you know, accepting that, you know, Mural was a thing and that there shouldn't be any animosity or whatever, or you know, trying to bring people over to the dark side, as we were told, at least from our angle. But I think they've done a huge job. I mean, actually, it's funny because I'm staring at the building. My grandmother lived here, and Tasha, one of the girls who runs Mural Fest, her grandmother lived across the street. We went to high school together, known each other for many years, and you know, there's no animosity there whatsoever. But it was just on a bigger scale. Like a lot of our people felt butthurt about, you know, the way that they had kind of treated us, and I think there was some other factors involved there too as well. But it was also the whole basis for the festival for us was always community involvement and volunteerism, and they went at it from the corporate, you know, we're going to pay people and get massive sponsorships, including, you know, $500,000 from the city every year to put on this giant festival.
I mean,
the numbers are there. You can go on.
I mean, like, but the other side of it is like, yo, like we did this little open mic thing over in front of one of them stores I can't afford, and bro, like the crowd was ill. Okay, like if I was on deck with merch in that moment, like if I was like really prepared like I'm supposed to be, I probably could have walked out of there with $150-$200. And that was like a like the ability to create that kind of crowd that's so invested in spending money is pretty incredible. And these people were just like there because that's what's going on in your brain as you're walking up this little thing. Then you come see some rappers. We were not there with that kind of shit on deck, but like I'm just picturing it now. Like yo, like that crowd was invested. They were so festive-y, and it's like a mix of tourism and local. It's like damn, and it's full.
For sure.
It was full, bro. I was like, holy shit, this is like I get why the city gave that kind of money. This is a tourism
and it's
flex.
Also, it happens. It's no coincidence that it happens during Grand Prix.
I didn't even make that connection.
It would be a week off of Grand Prix, and so they would close down Saint Laurent for one weekend, and then Grand Prix would take over and close down Saint Laurent the next weekend, and then they ended up making it a whole 10 days of street closure, or at least 9 days of street closure. So from one weekend to the end of the next weekend, the second weekend always being Grand Prix. So that kind of allowed them to unlock another level of funding and probably another level of companies that wanted to be associated with that festival as well.
Yeah.
So
all those storefronts, yo, like Blue Dog was open at like noon.
Yeah. And not as a barber shop.
Nah. It was just open. It was just like, yeah, you can get your drinks, bro. I'm like, And weirdly, there's not that much open around Blue Dog at that time of day.
No, and Belmont Terrace too, like probably maybe not noon, but like at least 3 p.m. they were opening up and had like massive lineups of awesome DJs all day long until the nighttime playing outside. I mean, I played the Terrace at Belmont with one of my last gigs in like 2014, and it must have been one of the first Mural fests, I guess, maybe 2 or 3 kind of thing. And that was one of my favorite gigs ever. Playing outdoors is always fun, and like playing outdoors on Saint Laurent on a terrace is amazing. You know?
Yeah, I can imagine.
That festival's done a lot for the city, and they've done a lot for the art as well. The acceptance of street art for sure, and it's been huge for the scene. I always feel like I sound like a bit of a jaded individual talking bad about it, but it's just.
I feel like
you're
not though. You're being like look, they like the bigger kid on the block doing what y'all doing at a bigger scale. Like fair enough. It's like when I talk about the successes of my homies, and secretly in my soul, I kind of wish there was a part of me that was having a little more successes and shit. Like I get it. But at the same time, I think you've also probably given a way more sufficient summary of their importance and cultural significance, like which way outweighs any level of jadedness in how you've described them, because like I don't really see the jadedness as much. I could see how y'all are like, fuck them for trying to poach my people for a quick minute, but like outside of that, it's like, yeah, we're here now and time's gone on, and you guys are different things. And I think it just because there's definitely people that'll never fuck with Mural Fest on some I'm a purist shit, and then there's people that'll never fuck with y'all on some whatever I gotta get paid shit. And it just gives there's people who do everything, and it gives people a space for it. Like some people really want that vibe, and like you said, that community thing is super important. There's not a lot of that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm sure that there's definitely part of it that comes from jealousy, whereas like I could do a hell of a lot more with the budget than I do trying to scrape together pennies and have people playing for free a lot of the time.
Bro, like I don't even know, man. There's something about being part of Under Pressure 27 as an idea and concept where it's like, who needs money?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
But like,
I'm sorry, I'm just trying to charge my phone here. It's going back.
I respect that. Some people don't have chargers for some reason, and it's wild. But yeah, no. I can imagine how having a bigger budget would, in fact, make your life easier, though. So don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to dismiss that. I'm just saying.
Make it easier and more complicated at the same time, too, obviously.
Wouldn't you then need like a whole different tier of contracts and shit now that you gotta have lawyers and this, that? I don't know if you probably do you need lawyers? Like, what's the bureaucracy side of this shit? Like, is it more like just get the permit, do the thing?
I mean, it's still at the base root of things, a hip hop thing. So if it was more money, it would probably be, you know, cash in hand. I don't think anybody really wants to necessarily sign contracts except for big international acts that, you know, the legalities of which, you know, agents and stuff like that need to get paid, so that the money needs to be on the books, kind of thing.
Right.
But yeah, I guess I never really thought about it very much, because I don't think, you know, big sponsors are kind of going to necessarily be a factor. I think the face of the festival is definitely going to change in years to come. I think it's going to evolve in different ways. And I think, you know, the music side of things is going to be definitely more present outside of the August festival. Going to be trying to do more music events on the regular hip hop based and some electronic things. I'm just trying to get the community activated more often, and not just, you know, once a year kind of thing. It's obviously a time factor and a manpower thing too. I do most of the organizing for the music myself.
Are you saying that if you have more help, if you have more help, is what I'm hearing, there would be like a more ongoing slew of like under pressure cons? We should fucking talk, bro. Both me and Willie had the same fucking thought at the same time, because he popped up in the chat like, bro, what are you saying? Holla. We got you. We want more shows where we can appear at, and then we'll do whatever we got to do to help make that shit happen. That's basically where a lot of us are at, actually. And there's more than just us. I know several like hungry people down to work right now to do what we got to do to build culture in the city, because most of us kind of recognize we need an ecosystem that's doper than like all love to Blue Dog. It's been wonderful. A little bit more. Because I fucks with Blue Dog.
People are hungry. People are hungry for culture and music and social right now. They need to be among people. They need to feel like they're getting their lives back. And it's huge. Like the need, it's a need. It's not a want anymore. It's like before you would want to go out. Now it's a need. I'm
craving it. If like 2 weekends goes by, I'm like, bro, I don't know what I'm doing with myself. I have to be around some strangers that I haven't seen before. I need that shit. I need to meet somebody new and be like, what's up? My name's Holden.
Yeah. No, it's kind of crazy. And I mean, people are more willing than ever to go and spend a little bit of money on a show, because they realize that music is going to soothe their soul, and it's going to nourish them for the rest of the week, month, you know, year, depending on what your tolerance for going out is. But live music is so huge for people, man. It really does calm you and hype you up at the same time. It's kind of something that nothing else can do. And I think, you know, through all these festivals and stuff this year, and even just this weekend, just seeing how crazy the city was. Just people need activity and need, you know, music and stuff like that. I think Francophonie really went off. And it's just the kind of start of festival season now. And we're going to see, you know, Jazz Fest and Just for Laughs and all that stuff. And it's going to be fucking nuts. It's going to be absolutely nuts. There'll be like a tenth of the population that's still wearing masks, and everybody else that's kind of a little bit more woke. Not to use the term, but, you know.
I mean, I'm going to be real with y'all. I wear glasses and say what the fuck you want. It's just really hard to live life with a mask and glasses. I am very grateful for this period of life. I looked at the Greyhound policy. They don't have mask requirements. I was like, this is the most wonderful news. All of it. I'm cool.
Greyhound bus?
Yeah, I'm going down to New York, so by bus. And so it's like I looked up the policy, and I'm like, bro, we can travel without masks now.
It's an American company, too, which is, you know, probably a heavy influence there.
Nah, it's because both our governments are cool with it. Just both sides of the board. I'm like, we're back at it. We're going inside. It's just good, okay? Like, I had to go to a play where they made me wear a mask, and it was weird. But I'll do it if you require it of me. I'm okay with that. But I much prefer the version of going out and partying where I can dance without a mask on and just breathe heavily, and it's okay.
Yeah.
It's just okay.
Yeah. It's all right.
How was the Grand Prix? I mean, I like sort of appeared by accident for part of it, but I wasn't really out for Grand Prix. I was for like that play. But
Yeah.
what? I guess you're just out there partying, or are you like working, or what are you doing during
Oh,
this period?
I was working in the kitchen. I was feeding the rich and ultra rich lobster and stuff like that up in the paddock club above the pits, where you pay $7,000 to have your whole everything paid for, basically food, drink, alcohol, all included, and it's where all the different sponsors have sections for their clients and whatnot, and there's a team of probably about 60 or 70 international chefs that travel with the Grand Prix, but in every city they need a little bit of help, so they enlist 30 to 50 people to help them for 2 days before the Grand Prix, 2 to 3 days before the Grand Prix, and then the 3 days of actual race time. And we were working 12, 13-hour shifts. Some of them were working 16, 17-hour shifts. There was dudes that were literally going home for 5 hours and coming right back. And yeah, it was a bit harrowing, but after sleeping pretty much, I think 20 out of 24 of the last hours before I got on this call with you, I'm feeling a lot better. Feeling a lot better about the world and myself. I mean, I think I had a bit of a serotonin dump last night where it was like, yeah, that was cool, but like, goddamn, it was a lot, man. It was
So you're working
very
with like elite
physically
chefs, and you're like the guys helping them. Let's say
elite. I don't know. Some of them were better than others. They were definitely very, very good chefs, and I mean, there's a hierarchy there, which was not very clearly defined. But they're very, very good chefs from all around the world, Spain, Italy, a lot of it's an Austrian company, actually. They handle like all the food for Emirates Airlines and Qatar Airlines and stuff like that. Some of the bigger, like more expensive airlines. And then they do all of Grand Prix, MotoGP. They do a few tennis events and stuff like that around Europe. And they have this like traveling sideshow, basically, where they have 4 setups around the world of all the equipment, all of the plates, all of the everything that deals with anything about the event. And they have 4 setups that travel the world so that one gets there while the other one's traveling, and so on and so forth. And there's one kind of around North America, and one in Asia, and one in the West somewhere there. And they literally bring all of their own equipment, where renting would totally be an option, but they feel comfortable with their equipment and they show up with everything, so they can probably charge a little bit more money and whatnot. And they have this giant team of chefs that shows up, and probably maybe 50% of that number becomes local chefs who get paid very handsomely. I don't do this shit for free anymore. I gotta get paid, or else I'm not setting foot in the kitchen.
Understood.
Every time I set foot in the kitchen, I say it's the last time.
I mean, Grand Prix shows up with money. I mean, that's a different check usually.
Oh yeah. Especially when you're working like 60, 65 hours in 5 days, and you're making like a month's salary. It's a bit of a game changer. It's going to allow me to go to a festival and go camping a couple of times over the next month.
Let's say word.
So it's like you feel like I have a summer.
You just got summer money. That's lit.
Yeah, because I mean, when you work in a kitchen, summer is when you're making your hours and when you're making bank. So often you don't really see a lot in the summer. And over the last couple of years with COVID, restaurants being closed during the summer, it was a bit of a different experience, and made me realize how much fun it is to get out, and be in nature, and just be doing stuff and going to festivals and shit like that even too. And that's kind of really what's important, especially as you're wanting to start growing a family and stuff like that, to be able to have part of the summer off is huge. I'd rather hustle twice as hard during the week to be able to go, you know, take 3 days in Tremblant or, you know, somewhere else, just, you know, camping or doing my thing. I'll work 3 times as hard to be able to have that time off, you know.
Right. I totally get that. I mean, I'm getting older and I appreciate life differently now. And one of the biggest reasons I stay at my current job is I get about 7 weeks off paid. And I don't know if there's more money. I mean, there's a number, but I don't know that I could have that number without drastically changing my lifestyle. So without that number, we good with the time off, because it's precious. It's like when things pop up, you want to know that it's paid days off. You know, like that's a big word.
Yeah, definitely.
So what's up with Under Pressure 27 then? So you have everything set up for that?
Sort of, yeah, not really. To be perfectly honest, things are evolving. We didn't want to make any real announcements until after Mural Fest. The one thing that I can say with certainty is that on the 13th of August, there's going to be multiple music events. Whether or not there's painting that goes along with that remains to be seen. We may push back the painting a little bit to be able to be more organized in terms of closures, because we're not going to be able to close all the streets, and we want to make it secure for everyone. And we know that it ends up being a real big party, and if the streets aren't closed, it puts people at risk, and we don't want to have any kind of security risk. We don't want to have any issues with the cops either, you know. So the painting may get pushed a little bit further back, but there will definitely be some music events for sure. And they may not necessarily all gravitate around Foufs. We may be more in the, you know, Saint Laurent region as well. Multiple venues, multiple different vibes. Definitely a big hip hop show that you will be opening. And
can you say who else is in the hip hop show?
Yeah, absolutely. You got yourself, Willie Scandals, Sammy Skills, bringing a few people.
Showbiz and Crazy Ace are gonna be up in there.
Yeah. We got Lo Pesci, we got CL, we got Basics, and probably a few more. Definitely a few more. And I know there's one big one in there that I'm forgetting too, but I can't put my finger on it. See, I haven't been doing that journaling thing we were talking about earlier. I haven't been writing down. I've been consistently like going back through my Facebook messages to find out who I talked to, which is not a good way of doing business.
No, that's not. That's how you end up with how I started this interview, where there's that conversation I never followed up on with you and didn't know about for like 9 years, because like you have to, bro. It hit a point where some days I will get messages from over 30 to 40 people. So like I have all intentions of responding to that message from 8 p.m. yesterday, but it's so far down the list now that it's never going to be seen again.
Yeah.
And then it's just, unless I remember. And I be working with tools though. I mean, I'm on and off with it, but I really try to like organize my life with various apps and shit that are just the digital app version of your books. I'm not good with books. I used to write notes on my workbooks and then need those notes and then not find them in my notebooks because I'd have 3 notebooks and not remember what. And so I got into the computer version of it, but I totally relate. Because, but so basically the DJ side, is that also locked up? Do you know, is that all connected to it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, go down the line, Overflow, Blaster, kind of the mainstays that are always there. More on the electronic side, we're gonna have an evening party. It's gonna be an all-female lineup, plus Boy Parts Project, who does some really, really dope live stuff. There's Melodrastic, Dinzy, Melek, and Soph Silva on that show. It's going to be really, really dope one. It may or may not be going past 3 a.m., but we'll see more towards the date when the time comes.
Are you allowed, is that like outdoors past 3 a.m. or is that like indoors?
No, indoors.
Okay.
That will be an indoor show for sure. The outdoor component will most likely be the terrace at Fouf's, unless that changes, but I don't think that will change. The first floor at Fouf's will be probably where the hip hop show is, and then going into the evening, the music will continue. It's looking like we'll probably keep that, you know, more hip hop based, and maybe stretch out the show a little longer instead of it being just from 3 to 7. Might kind of throw a few DJs in there and stretch it out, make it a whole day thing into the evening. So yeah, it's kind of things are materializing. Hopefully this week or next we'll be able to announce solidly exactly what's going on. But the management at Fouf's right now is suffering from post-COVID burnout and not doing too well. So it's kind of hard to get back and forth, you know, with them. So I think everybody's kind of feeling the crunch of getting back to normality and just kind of remembering the rhythm that this industry goes at. The pace is always pretty intense, and to go from literally 0 to 100 is taking its toll on certain people. And I think just COVID in general really fucked with a lot of people's mental health in general.
It also fucked with a lot of people's fiscals.
Yeah,
like
for sure.
Like drinks be permanently higher for the rest of life. They will never go like it used to be $5.50, now it's $7.50. It used to be $7, now it's $9. And that's just the forever. And I mean, I get it. I'm sure most of these places lost a lot of money in the last 2 years.
Right. Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's places like Fouf's where it was like we go in for Under Pressure and there'd be a coating of dust, a heavy coating of dust on everything. And it was so surreal. Like life just stopped and people forgot about, you know, things like culture and going out to restaurants and stuff like that. It was like entertainment wasn't a thing for a while there. It was like entertainment was Netflix and chill. It wasn't like fucking, you know, going out and getting schmammered at fucking Fouf's, you know?
Yeah.
So it was a bit of a different vibe for a while there. And, I think the lack of release, the lack of being able to have that release for people was a major cause of a lot of the mental health, but also just being hammered with fear constantly is not good for anyone, you know?
No, I totally appreciate that. I feel like it was just weird times. I got obsessed with the internet because there was nothing else to do. I mean, streaming and talking to people on Zoom a lot was really fun. I mean, it's still, it's different fun now. It's different when you're like, yo, but imagine we was set up in a place where we could be doing this in a bar and then streaming that shit. That's the future of this. I don't know how to get there yet, but now that the vision's there, it's like I'd rather not. I mean, I'm certain there's Zoom calls in my future still, don't get me wrong, but like, yo, just imagine the potential for the engagement of the audience, or like if people have questions, they can like, you know, like we see on TV with that shit, they get up with that little microphone and ask their little question.
Yeah.
Whew, be a whole vibe.
Make it more of a convention kind of thing.
Or make like an evening, you know, get to know Dave Lortie. Like already his shit's like easily pushing the 2-hour point, which for me is average. It's not even like a rarity. So it's like you could easily turn this into a whole ass evening where anybody that really want to get to know you kind of thing come through. And then you got the regulars who just want to get to know the culture in general, and you turn it into like kind of like what you care about Under Pressure, but like in real life. Because apparently I
got a few ideas. I got a few ideas for you on that. That's for sure.
Yeah, we should definitely talk about that.
It'd be a very good look.
But with that, so like after Under Pressure's done, like what's next for you?
For me?
Yeah.
I mean, as far as life, I think a whole lot of woodworking and stuff like that is kind of what I'm into right now. Getting more into that. I went to school during the whole pandemic thing for finishing woodworking, but I'm enjoying the building stuff custom for people. I'm working on a restaurant right now, and some planters and a bar and a whole lot of different shit. So I'm looking forward to seeing where that brings me. And sound. I'm really into sound right now, doing corporate gigs, setting up and taking down sound and lighting equipment, making my money.
That's some good money to be made.
I'm interested to see where that takes me to. Or, I might go the union route, or I might stay doing what I'm doing because it gives me a little bit more freedom. But yeah, I think I'm kind of back to the hustling and more working for myself, doing contract work and stuff like that, instead of getting involved with something more limiting. And I'm not really, I've never been a 9-to-5 guy, that's for sure. I mean, especially working in the restaurant industry, you're never really a 9-to-5 guy. And when you are, it means you're not cooking. So it's kind of defeating the purpose.
Right.
I got to a kind of point in that career where I was doing more organizing and managing than I was actual cooking, and that's when it kind of lost its appeal for me. So
basically, you keep getting really successful, leaning towards the logistical bureaucracies, getting bored, and moving on.
Pretty much. That's a good way to sum it up. Yeah.
That's wild. But people like you are a blessing, man, because logisticals is hard. Like, I'd be like a dude with like half of one eye open, trying to like figure out this whole giant maze of moving forward in this shit. So it's like, to me, people like you is more of a blessing than not, because y'all just know shit. Like, oh, you do real deal. You're big. It's bigger than anything I've done. So it's like blessings to link up with people like you, especially like, Under Pressure is cool. Like, I never went, but it was always cool. And you always represented like the realist, purist form, and not like in a hip hop purist head's purist form, but like the cultural, like, you just kind of want to be there for the right reasons vibe, coolness of it. Like, it was always perceived like that to me. So just to be a part of it is, for me, like a giant blessing. And this time there will be people there, right? Like, we're allowed to have people.
Yeah. It's a big one. It's kind of, it's really fucked up that we have to eat.
Sorry? Yeah, you're right. But like,
it's messed up that that's even a thing now. That it was like we did things on the internet without people there.
Super weird.
It's crazy. Blows my mind. Yeah. But here we are, back to kind of relative normality, and
yeah, I hope y'all still stream that shit. Because if y'all still stream that shit, it's still like the extra flex, because like, you don't want to miss out on that people that don't live here opportunity, that donation money.
I'm gonna say it here, but you can almost guarantee that it won't be advertised until very, very close to the festival. But I will be, as far as I know, streaming most of, if not all of the events online on Twitch.
Yes, sir.
I'm gonna not focus on promoting that, because I feel like it gives people an excuse not to come.
I mean, you got to look at it like this. There's people here that may also, okay, and this is more like a fiscal side too, because of the direct donation capabilities of Twitch. There are people that just that can't be there. So you have to ask yourself the bigger question. Is it worth sacking the potential giant out there internet audience of people who are invested, who no longer live in Montreal, who would probably need time to like make time for that? For, you know what I mean? Like, I hear what you're saying. I'm just saying, consider them. That's why I love Twitch, and everything I'm ever going to do in the future, except for when it's on my cell phone at live events in the near future, are going to be like stream, because like, like, there are people that, like Lindell here, he's been in the chat. He's at every fucking thing. He's in Florida. Like, he could never be here, but he probably watched that shit.
For sure.
So I'm just saying, other food for thought on the other side of it.
Definitely. I think it's just my promoter anxiety about, like, are people actually going to come to my show kind of thing.
Yeah, I hear you, bro.
never have to have that anxiety when it comes to pressure. On the flip side, online, I feel like we didn't have nearly as good of a presence as we could have, especially last year. But I mean, that's also due to kind of manpower and promotion capability. It's tough to get people to stay inside on their computer during the summer as well. If it was like a winter event and people didn't want to go out and they wanted to watch it at home and have a little, living room party, that's a whole different vibe. But when it's the hottest it can possibly be and Montreal is buzzing, even during COVID, it's a hard sell to say between 12 and 8 p.m. watch us, online live from Foofs, place where you can't go, and it was a bit of a tough.
And we could talk about that.
But now it's kind of a contingency where, like you said, it's people that can't necessarily.
But it's more than that too, right? Like high key, I bumped a bunch of that shit, right, from my computer at home, because I can do things while under pressure. Yeah. I wasn't going to that show, right?
Yeah.
But and even in real life, I have my schedule. I might spend 5-6 hours in a weekend. If you're lucky, you'll get 8 hours of me at your festival. That's 3 days. What? I mean, I would love to come spend 3 full fucking days there, but it's probably not gonna. But if I can watch that shit on Twitch, I could literally have that on my bicycle while I'm cycling. You don't need to necessarily watch it as much as vibe to it.
No.
So it's just
I feel that for sure.
It's just different shit, but I don't think it would really inhibit anything. If anything, it's like an ad. Now I see your shit, and I'm like, I could still be there.
Yeah, for sure.
But I'm pro internet shit. I can't even help it. So you're going to be running all that. If you ever need help with it, let us know. We be part of this little internet squad that we trying to make Twitch a little more lit with it. And dude, I appreciate you coming through with this. I feel like you shared a lot of interesting sides of what you've done. A lot of useful. If you really listen to this, there's some knowledge to be extracted on stuff we could probably adopt. Because, like I said, a lot of us are not necessarily up to. I know Willie is. A lot of us is not necessarily up to date with the fucking promotion game. Because my whole music career has been paid to play internet shit. Even with as a performer, man, a lot of these things you're seeing my name on, bro, I had to put money up for practically all of it except for Willie shit. Everybody's
she's crazy.
And you know what, part of why I'm doing it is because the pitch changed. The pitch is a little more direct. It's listen, if we want the show to happen, we gotta pay the DJ together. And I'm okay, I accept what you're saying to me. This is a little more I can handle this level of transparency with me, and I'll throw in whatever I'm throwing in.
Yeah.
And that's the whole scene though. As of 2014, that is the scene as I know it. I know there are opportunities that don't do that. They don't seem to unfold in my periphery. So I don't know where they exist. And it's just kind of I don't know where I was really going with this. I'm not gonna. Oh, yeah, promotion and shit. So when everything's basically pay to play /ads /paid ads whatever, you don't really know how to approach promotion. But if you think back to even just a little tidbit, when you're dealing with rave kids, look for the candy, the jewelry, and just these little things, right? That's the level of tips that really Dave be dropping wisdom in. So when you listen to this, you can hear that shit.
The same thing goes for hip hop. I mean, you look for that little swagger and somebody, but hip hop's it's so far beyond that now. It can interest pretty much anyone, and people just need to have that extra reason to want to be at your show, and then that could open up doors for them, musically or culturally or whatever the case may be.
At this point, bro, you just have to say your name will be on a fucking flyer and pretty much everybody's going to show up. Because, I think a lot of us are doing it for press kit purposes, to be honest. I think we all Googled what a press kit was over the last 2 years. So we all understand the concept of a one-pager now. But,
EPK.
Yeah, that part, the EPK. We all be understanding this at a deeper level and recognizing that we have to have a more lively presence of shit like flyers in order to have proof of the thises and that's and all of that good shit. So you say, oh, I could be at a thing with a flyer. Let's fucking go. I can film me doing things. And I think people are just and plus it's fun. It's been really fun. I just have to say to anybody watching this, I had a blast. Everybody's been so lonely for 2 years that we're all nicer than we've ever been.
Yep.
That's my experience,
Yeah,
at least with
for
the
sure.
artist world. I can't talk about the people that are outside the artist sphere because usually I'm hanging out with all the artists. But damn, have we been having a blast at this shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know if you have anything else you want to share with the folk.
No, man, I think that about sums it up, I guess.
Yeah.
See you guys all this summer, hopefully in real life once again.
Yeah. Willie wants me to point out that he met Cool Herc at Under Pressure, and he appreciates that. And he's not sure if you were there for that in that one, but he appreciates that in general.
Yeah, that was. I think the first time Cool Herc came was the first year that I was organizing all the music, and that was super huge. I mean, he came back again too a couple of years later. Yeah, it was a big one for a lot of people. Man. Yeah, the inventor of the block party wouldn't be doing what we do without him having done that first, you know?
Yeah, man, it is a big moment.
Yeah.
Man, you're an interesting guy. You're one of those people that I feel like people should know about because, like, you've done things that have moved things forward in multiple genres of music, which is multiple communities and stuff, and that's fire. Plus, you were tapped into the early hip-hop days, bro. Yo, a lot of these people then that are still today, probably in a little bit, are very grateful for your existence.
Shit, I appreciate that, man.
But yeah, thank you for coming through again. I appreciate you a lot. I really do. Every time somebody comes through and shares their knowledge with us, it's like helpful because we do grow and whatnot. Thank you to the people that are watching with us. Some of you stuck with us the whole way through, and that makes y'all absolutely wonderful people, and I appreciate that. For those of you in the future watching on whatever platform, y'all are wonderful too, and you can follow Dave Lortie at Dave Lortie 8 on Instagram. I'll be sending everybody to Instagram, and it'll be in the links in description for everyone else, but for whoever may be on an audio platform, we got you. But yeah, I don't know what else to really say in this moment. I super appreciate you coming through and doing this, like I said, man. And yeah, on that note, I'm starting the little raid thing. I'm going to leave y'all out there with a live long and prosper.